In 2007, I joined the United States Peace Corps. I'm thrilled that I did, but some background to this decision. I had just finished an undergraduate degree in international studies. I focused on history and the Middle East and Arabic. I was lucky to count years of Spanish under my belt. And while I'm from the suburbs of DC, I like to think I'm a city girl at heart. But I was in search of an adventure. For those of you who are not familiar with the Peace Corps, you're assigned a country and a sector, and you live in that country for 2.5 years. So, in the true brilliance of my government, they sent me to live in a village in Camaroon, to speak French, and to be a farmer. You can imagine how well this was going to work out. I had absolutely no clue what to do when I first arrived to Bamandju. I was young and scared and felt like I had to do something immediately so that the reality that I had just moved to a tiny town in Central Africa would not set in. So, like most naive volunteers, I decided to launch a tree planting campaign. I thought, what could go wrong? Well, I met with principals and students from dozens of schools in my region, and I harvested thousands of seeds. I went to each of the schools, planted trees with the kids, and I waited. And you know what happened? They all died. They didn't really die, but to be fair, they didn't grow into anything either. I was ashamed, and it was my fault. Lesson number 1 of farming: never plant trees in the dry season. I had hoped that everyone would forget my disaster, but they didn't. To boot, they thought it was hilarious. And it's not like I had a colossal failure in the comfort of my own home. It's not like I invited my friends over to dinner, cooked something disgusting, quickly ran to Eastern Food Market, bought a curry, put it on the stove, and pretended I cooked it. It wasn't like that at all. This is what I had been sent to do, agroforestry, and I failed in front of everyone. And I mean everyone, small children and adults alike. I asked a friend about the tree planting disaster a year later, and he replied, "Oh, of course they were going to die. We would never, ever, ever plant trees in the dry season." I asked him why no one had stopped me, and he said, "You were so happy and so enthusiastic." And we were like, we'll go with it. Everyone would pass me in the market and say, "Miss Nora, it is so good to see you. You came to our school and planted dead trees." Well, so here's my first lesson. Don't let the fear of failure stand in your way. Fear of failure controls our lives so much more than our desire for success. Our brains are built for avoiding. Just think about all the things you didn't do today because you were afraid to fail. Because of those trees, I met nearly every child in my region. I spoke to every teacher and every child and principal and got to know the tiniest paths linking villages to one another. And years later, after we had collaborated on other projects, some successful, we had something to laugh about: my stupid tree planting. Lesson number 2, you cannot Google everything. I was a bit intimidated to come speak here today, so I figured I'd do some background research. So I Googled how to grow up. Here are some suggestions. One website, called How to Grow the F Up and Act Like an Adult, has a guide called How to Not Live in Filth. A cursory guide, but very informative. Another suggested I delete Facebook. Obviously, not possible. And Gwyneth Paltrow's Goop guide on how to spot an emotional grown-up reassures me that I am not one. My friend, the internet can make you feel bad about yourself. But the point is, I was going about Googling how to grow up all wrong. You cannot Google the person that you're going to become. You can't Google what makes you unique, what makes you brilliant, and what makes you ready to contribute to the world. Lesson number 3, learn and remember people's names. This is King Jean Remo Philippe II. He's the king of Bamandju, the village I lived in Cameroon. He has 44 wives, and according to village lore, has personally fathered 98 children. But not only does he know each of their names, he knows what subjects they love in school and what they want to be when they grow up. But how often do you know the names of people you interact with on a regular basis? The checker at Willie's, the bus driver who drives you every day, that friend of a friend, you know that one? Think about how much time we spend thinking and commenting about what people wear, what people look like, what people's bodies are like, what their accents are, how they sound. If we took a fraction of that time to focus on people's names, we might actually remember them, and how wonderful it would be to call someone by their name. Lesson number 4. It's okay to spend time by yourself. This is my dog, Kaplan. He spends every morning and all day in front of our house lying on a lawn chair. He literally does nothing all day. Having spent a lot of time in the Middle East and growing up in a Palestinian family, people immediately think something's off if you want to be alone. We see someone at a coffee shop and we're like, what is wrong with that person? And while human beings are naturally social creatures, I think we thrive on our independence. But often we separate ourselves from the people right next to us because we're texting and we have our earphones on. When we're alone, we feel like we have to be doing something. We feel like we have to be watching something or calling someone or listening to something. And if we don't, we're wasting time. But there's a beautiful path right smack in the middle. Get to know the person that you can know better than anyone else, yourself. Understanding the way you work is key to understanding the way other people work. And I should add here that I sent my talk to my friend Alia, and she wrote, maybe you should add something about how you're really bad at this and how you haven't mastered this at all. And if you did, you would be ... something. So for what it's worth, I'm working on this one too. Lesson number 5. You are not busy. A friend was in a mentorship program, and the mentor asked everyone about their day. And my friend shot off a litany of things that she was doing and how she was so overwhelmed and how she didn't have room for anything else on her plate. And the woman paused and said, no, you are not busy. How dare you say that with so many wonderful things ahead of you? Rather rephrase, my life is rich and full. Lesson number 6. Celebrate the uniqueness of your background. These are my parents, Sami Khalil Suleiman and Penelope Mitchell. My father was born in a small town in Palestine, and he went to the University of Jordan. He was the president of the student government there, and when he came to the United States, his first job was working in a funeral parlor. My mom was born in the United States in a town called Michigan. She had never been friends with someone who wasn't like her until she went to college. At 18, she fundamentally challenged what she had been taught, protested to racially integrate America and end the US's involvement in Vietnam. She opened a Middle Eastern restaurant after college, and there she met my father. Because of their backgrounds, who they were growing up, and the people that they became as adults, differences in opinion were not just tolerated, they were demanded. I went to a predominantly Jewish school in Washington, D.C. As the child of a Muslim Palestinian and an Episcopalian from Michigan who was raised at protests, I can assure you that I had to grow up fast and make sure that my roots were firmly in the ground in even the most trying of political discussions. We are so obsessed with fitting in, but we're all from very different root systems. So why not embrace it, or better yet, celebrate it? Lesson number 7. You cannot write your history unless you read your past. Sir Richard Steele once said, reading is to the mind what exercise is to the body. In Cape Town, we're obsessed with the exercise part, but we don't equate reading with the same benefit. And when I say reading, I'm not talking 140-word tweets and someone's Facebook status. I'm talking about the good old-fashioned reading, something that smudges in your hands. The internet is full of misinformation. How often have you been curious about something, looked it up online, and somehow ended up on a 12-year-old's history page? Well, I have, and more often than I'd like to admit. but there's a lot of really inspiring things out there in print. We have so much to learn from our past in order to progress towards our future. Lesson number 8. Love the part of yourself you can't see. I will always be statuesque. I have a grand derriere and really wide hips. But when I think about the person I want to be, it isn't a supermodel, it's my mom. And you know what? She's got a really big butt too. My mom spends a lot of time in Palestine. She's the director of an academic research center and absolutely brilliant. Her life's work is figuring out how to create opportunities for Palestinians, to connect them to other researchers and scholars, to publish their research, and to make sure that every day is a little bit better for them. She's fearless. She's jumped out of airplanes, is the last person on the dance floor, and at 65, still can't wait to find out what she's going to be when she grows up. Through my mother, I have learned that it is the unseen things in us that harness our greatest potential. I don't think that at 18, my mom had any idea what her life would be like. She's got the strongest moral compass and roots of anyone I know, and yet she had to be lithe enough to have her tree swept up in a Michigan breeze to travel around the world. It's okay to be unsure about your future, but you have to be determined about making one for yourself. Lesson number 9. You will have to grow up someday, and it will be hard. When your name is Nura Suleiman and you're a Palestinian in America, you have to come into the world ready to defend yourself. There's an awkward silence that happens when you tell people that you're a Palestinian. Sometimes people pause and say, Pakistan. And when you say, no, Palestine, there's a longer pause. Oh, you mean Israel. No, not that place either. I explain as best I can what it means to be a Palestinian, what it means to say existence is resistance. Growing up is realizing that while every single person comes into the world with the same brilliance, we're all on our own growing up timeline. My 15-year-old self would be incensed when someone would say, but Palestinians throw rocks, and I would be befuddled that this is where we had to begin the discussion. I'm turning 30 in 3 weeks, and I like to think that my 30-year-old self is going to be a bit more patient. I try and meet them where they think the discussion should begin, no matter how redundant the lesson gets. I am very pleased to tell you all that my life is rich and full. I am my parents' daughter, and I will always be growing up. Ooh, whatever that one. I am no expert at trees, but I am learning that it's not about the quality of knowledge you have. Actually, it is about the quality. It's not about the quantity. I'm not sure what lesson number 10 is going to be, but I can't wait to make a mistake to find out. It is a very wonderful thing to have infinite faith in the universe, that everything is going to work out, and excessive courage to know that when it doesn't, you're going to find another way. I hope tomorrow is a very rich and full day for all of us. Thank you.